this week, pay close attention to using stories, metaphors, and analogies on everything that you do. So you all know that I teach you when you're doing listing appointments, handling objections, negotiating offers, to use stories, metaphors, analogies. But I want to share with you something that really helps solidify this for you. The reason why I want you to do this, not just in real estate, but as often as possible, when you get off this call, I want you to think anytime that you can use a metaphor analogy, whether it's at the store, you're talking to somebody on telephone about ordering something, real estate, non-real estate, try to use metaphors, analogies as much as possible. Here's why. One of my favorite shows, I talked about this on last week's webinar, was Whose Line Is It Anyway? And for those of you who don't know what the show was, these actors would be given a scenario and they'd have to create a script on the spot. Now, what happens, it's like a creative muscle. You get better. The more you do that, the better you become at it. It's just such an awesome show because you would see this amazing, like these funny things that these actors would throw together last minute. It's a creative muscle. And the more you use the creative muscle, using metaphors, analogies, the more you can think on your feet. I'll give you for instance on this. I'm going to share something that happened to me this week with my son, which, by the way, how I raised my son, it was the same way. You know, my son, when he was just an example of using a metaphor outside of real estate, my son was having problems in high school with some friends. And my son's Michael. He loves Xbox. Newsflash. Anyway, so I said to my son when he was having problems with his friends, I said, Michael, you know, with Xbox, when you play your games, you play with your friends. How does that work? And he would explain it to me. So you'd have to work together as a team, and you've got to coach each other, and you've got to deal with problems. And so you're coordinating what you're doing. There's a lot of communication when you're playing Xbox so you can win that level. He says, exactly. I said, well, that's how relationships are in real life. The challenges you're having with your friends in schools, because maybe you're not communicating fully like you do when you're playing Xbox. You've got to see the bigger picture and what it is you're trying to accomplish together as friends, and have those communications, have that detailed communication. Anyway, that would be an example of me using metaphor. And let me tell you why. Let me tell you something that happened this week, and I'm going to tell you why this is so important for you. My son is 24 years old. He's in Florida. And he moved down there this year, and he sent me this text. He said, Dad, I'm sad I miss Alexi, his girlfriend. And I said, yeah, that kind of feeling never goes away for people you care about. It lessens when you're in a new relationship, but it'll still always be there. You know, I have girlfriends from 30 years ago that I still think about. And then he said, I don't want this feeling. If she's gone, she should be 100% gone. I'm sure she misses me too, but I don't know. So you can tell my son's going through this challenge. Now, before I tell you what my answer was for my son, I want you to understand the importance of metaphors and analogies. When we use a metaphor analogy, we're going into a person's world of something that they've experienced that they can relate to, and you're using that as the example. When you do that, people don't just listen to me, they don't just hear your message, they feel it. So this was my advice to my son when he was going through this pain. This was just last week. I said, Michael, I'm sure she feels the same way you do, and only people that are not empathetic can get rid of those feelings 100%. You're going to have those feelings. You just have to work through it. Here comes the analogy, gang. Just like you work through the feelings of physical pain at the gym. See, my son goes to the gym every day. Or during the pandemic, you know, he worked out another way of not going to the gym, but still working out. My son loves to work out. So I said, when you're working out, you work through the physical pain. So today, you'll just have to mentally work through those feelings of missing her. And just like you get through the physical pain when you're working out, you will get through the emotional pain. You just have to work through it. Never give in to the pain, because then the pain will stay with you. You work through it. All right. So anyway, My son, then he texted me, he says, Dad, you're my rock, which is a very sweet thing for him to say. Yeah. But here's my point, gang, is to coach my son through this relationship pain he was going through, missing his girlfriend. I had to think to myself, what is it analogy that my son can relate to? And I knew the gym is so important to him and working out. I used the physical pain as the analogy to getting through his emotional pain. The more you do this, the more creative you become. So this week, I want you to think, where can you use metaphors and analogies to communicate a message to somebody that you want to communicate a message to? And the more you do it, the better you'll become at it. Did that make sense, Julie?